In life, we all experience hurdles. Now, last week, Pastor Alex was talking about a real-life experience for him with hurdles, but I want to think more about hurdles in a figurative way this morning. You know, a hurdle may be described as something that is unexpected that comes into our life. You know, maybe it's an issue that we thought we were going to do better on the test than we actually did. Maybe it's an issue that we had a close friend or a family member that was going to come and visit, and they had to cancel, and it brought disappointment. Or maybe it's an issue that you wanted a ticket to a concert and it was sold out. Or you went into a restaurant and you were wanting that baked sweet potato, but they were all out. You know, we face hurdles, we face disappointments every day, and a lot of times those hurdles, those disappointments, we just jump right over and go on. But sometimes an unexpected hurdle, though, can trip us up. You know, for whatever reason, we lose our stride, and then another hurdle comes up, not far behind it, and before you know it, it's more than we can take, and we find ourselves picking ourselves up off the ground. You know, the strange thing about hurdles in life is that one person seems to soar over a hurdle, and someone else gets tripped up by that same hurdle. You know, two people lose their job. One seems to go out and find another one and doesn't even lose a step or lose a stride, while someone else, that becomes a major obstacle for them that throws them. Sometimes, you know, when we face disappointments again and again, you know, it can take us down. But sometimes in life, it simply feels like we've hit a brick wall. A loved one dies, a marriage ends, an accident happens, a diagnosis of cancer comes, a debilitating health condition hits. We've all had brick walls that we've hit from time to time in our lives. And when we hit that brick wall, I think it's easier for us to deal with it when we can figure out why. When we know why we feel the way we do, why we've hit that brick wall. But you know, sometimes in life, we hit a brick wall and we don't even know why. We don't know what the source of that brick wall is, but we just know that we feel crummy. We know that we feel like we're in the pits. So this morning, I want to share with you from Psalm 130. And I call this my brick wall psalm. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. O Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. If you, O Lord, kept a record of sins, O Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness. Therefore you are feared. I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and in His word I put my hope. My soul waits for the Lord. More than watchmen wait for the morning. More than watchmen wait for the morning. O Israel, put your hope in the Lord. For with the Lord is unfailing love, and with Him is full redemption. He Himself will redeem Israel from all their sins. Psalm 130 is a part of a group of psalms called the Psalms of Ascent. You can find the Psalms of Ascent in Psalms 120 through 134. And I believe that these Psalms of Ascent were recited by religious pilgrims as they went to the temple, as they went to the holy place to worship. Matter of fact, there are those who say there are 15 steps leading up to the temple, and as a worshiper would go into the temple, they would recite one of these psalms as they went up each of the steps. Pastor Alex, can you imagine what it would be like here on Sunday morning if people recited a psalm each step they came up into our church? But that was the practice. And you know, they talked about heartache. They talked about challenges. But these psalms also talked about God's faithfulness and God's goodness. You know, sometimes when we're feeling down, sometimes when we're feeling discouraged, it's easy to beat up ourselves. Say, well, if I were a better Christian, I wouldn't feel this way. If I just had more faith, I wouldn't feel this way. If I just read the Bible more, then life would be better. If I would just pray more, then I wouldn't have so much disappointment and discouragement in my life. Have you ever done that to yourself? Don't answer. We all have. We've all had those times in which we've been down and we beat up on ourselves thinking if you just did a little more, if you just did something else, if you just get your act together, you wouldn't be hitting this brick wall. Now, let me say there are times when we experience difficulty because of the consequences of choices we make. There are times that we face difficulties in life because of consequences of sin. But even in our struggles with the consequences of sin, let me remind you that our God is a God of grace and a God of mercy. He's a God of mercy, which means that He doesn't give us the punishment that we deserve. And He is a God of grace, which means that He bestows upon us favor and opportunity and blessings that we have done nothing to earn or deserve on our own. Remember, these Psalms of Ascent were recited by worshiping pilgrims who were going to Jerusalem, to the temple to worship. They weren't outcasts. They weren't reprobates. They weren't evil people. These were people that loved God. And they wanted to worship Him and to serve Him. They're doing this because they're the religious faithful, and these people whose hearts longed after God, this is what they said. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Hear my cry for mercy. Does that surprise you? That those who are faithful, those who maybe have their act together with God would say, out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord? Just because you're close to God doesn't mean that you're never going to have problems in life. Just because you're close to God doesn't mean that you're never going to call out to Him at a place of desperation or discouragement. Let me say that another way. When you are crying out to God from the depths of your soul, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've strayed from God or that you're being punished. As we look at the pages of Scripture, I believe that we find giants of the faith who struggled with hitting a brick wall in their life, struggled with discouragement and depression. In Numbers chapter 11, there's a story of Moses. Moses, a great man of faith. Moses, the guy that God has called to lead His people out of bondage and slavery in Egypt. And yet, Moses is so frustrated because the people are grumbling. The people are complaining, and Moses said, I can't do this. The burden is too heavy for me. Moses is saying to God, God, this is just too hard. If I knew how hard this was going to be, I would have never agreed to it. He said, God, this is so hard. Why don't you just take my life now? I think Moses was suicidal in this passage. He didn't act on those thoughts, but he was struggling. He was struggling because he felt like he had a task that was too big for him to handle. David is described as a man after God's own heart, and yet he bore tremendous heartache. Now, yes, some of David's heartache was because of sin, because of choices that he had made in his life, but that wasn't the source of all of David's problems. David was chosen by God to be king of Israel, and yet there were armies who were chasing after him, trying to find him, trying to track him down in order to put him to death. There were times where David had a dysfunctional family, and he was struggling with how to respond to those family struggles.